couldn't be more excited about this. We've been building up to this for a long time. I'm going to take you back about a year and a half ago to our Marvel Day at Sea Disney cruise. Of course, along with that amazing sailing, we met some fantastic people, and we seem to be running into one in particular, or his group of friends, many, many times. The more we spoke with him, we found out he had a pretty amazing story to tell, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It was just inspiring is the best word I can use for talking to him and hearing about his story.
Right. So we mentioned the podcast, and he said, yes, I'd be interested in joining us. We were very close to bringing him on a couple of times, but then something kind of big came up, so we had to put a pause in that. That's okay. We couldn't be more excited about it, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have him join us now. Now, get load of this bio. He's a lifelong comic book reader and Disney fan who showed a passion for animation from a young age. He grew up in a blue-collar Mexican-American family and was the first in his family to graduate from college, attending Savannah College of Art and Design, where he studied film and television before going on to pursue a master's degree in visual studies at the University of Colorado, Denver. After college, he relocated to LA to work in animation full-time, and his love of Disney combined with his focus and work ethic paved his way to his first job as a production assistant. Oh, on just a little show, the Emmy Award-winning Elena of Avalor, before working his way up to staff writer on several other Disney Junior series, including one of our favorites, Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures, Pupstruction, Tots, The Chicken Squad, and now, get this, he is the co-executive producer and story editor of Disney Junior's Marvel's Iron Man and His Awesome Friends, that is available now both on Disney Junior and on Disney Plus. More importantly, he's an incredible, fascinating talent and just plain great person. James Eason-Garcia, welcome to the Hyperion Adventures podcast.
Hi, Tom and Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Hi. Well, we're so excited, as Tom mentioned, and we're actually honored. And we're very much looking forward to talking about your new project. But before we get into that, we'd kind of like to go into a little bit of your backstory and go back a little bit. As Tom mentioned, some of your hobbies as a child, starting as a child at a young age, was comic book collection and everything. But we were wondering, was there particular stories or characters from your childhood that really inspired you to pursue a career in storytelling?
Yeah, I love that question. I always was obsessed with animation as a kid from like an early age, and Disney was it for me, right? Like it was Cinderella, it was Little Mermaid, it was all those like very classic princess stories that I was just so fascinated with as a kid. And just growing up, I never wanted to watch live action. I was always like, no, it's got to be animation. Like the idea of watching like a live action anything just seemed boring. Like, no, that's for like old people. I don't want to do that. Like, I want to watch animation. It's for me. It's for kids. And nothing about that has changed in 40 years. But I just really grew to love animation, specifically like classic Disney animated films. I was lucky enough to grow up in like the late 80s, early 90s when like DuckTales was a big deal and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers and Tailspin. So that was my afternoon. Like I came home and it was time to watch like my Disney afternoon. And DuckTales for me was probably like the one that grabbed me the most because I loved that sense of adventure. There was like family relationships that were really fun, but it was just like a good time every time. And you never knew what part of the world they were going to explore or what they were going to do or who they would save or what crazy thing like Uncle Scrooge would get up to. So that kind of started my love of like sequential episodic storytelling was DuckTales. I also had, like I said, the love of the classic Disney animated features. Beauty and the Beast for me was the one that really changed it all. I think I was finally kind of old enough to understand a little bit more about it. And right at that same time, my family and I had gone to Walt Disney World and we got to visit MGM Studios, the old MGM Studios. And we walked into the animation pavilion there and my mouth was just on the floor. I was the first time I realized like, people do this. This is a job. People can make this art and tell these stories. and just walking through and getting that tour with Robin Williams, like explaining like the process to you and everything. And I was just glued immediately. My face was like pressed to the glass watching all the people do it. And the rest of the day, the family wanted to go ride Great Movie Ride or Indiana Jones. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm going to stay here. And all I wanted to do was just keep doing that tour again and again and again, to the point where when we were leaving, my parents asked if there was like anything I wanted for the trip. And I was like, all I want is that art of animation book that they were selling in the store. Cause I wanted to just go home and like study and pour over it and learn everything I could. So that really created my love of animation. I'd always had it, but that solidified it at that moment. And that kind of became the focus from then on out. Soon after that, I discovered Batman the Animated Series. And I always make everybody laugh because my family wasn't a big like comic book people. They weren't superhero people. We never watched Star Wars or anything like that. And I had been home sick one day and I was too sick to like get up and turn the television channel. And Batman came on, Batman the Animated Series. And again, I sat there with like my mouth on the floor and I was like, what is this amazing thing? Who's this amazing character? What's going on? And I went back to school and I was telling everybody, have you heard of this guy, Batman? And everybody's like, yeah, dude, like we all know who Batman is. But for me, I had just discovered him and then through that discovered comic books. All of my first comic books were the Batman, the Animated Series comic books that they had. So that just kind of kept growing. And as I read more Batman, I'd go to the comic book store and it'd be like, oh, who's this Superman character? And then I'd go back and be like, who are these X-Men character? Which then coincided with the X-Men animated series coming out, which I was also a huge fan of. And that just kind of spiraled into this massive collection that I still have today. And I've been dragging around my collection of 30,000 plus comic books for the last 30 plus years of my life, much to my husband's disappointment. He's like, I don't have any closet space. But I'm like, yeah, but we have comics, we have storytelling, and that's what matters.
That's so awesome. Love it. Love it.
100%. And by the way, I was looking behind you as we were talking about this. I think you are like, I don't think I see a lot of superhero behind you, but I see a lot of castles and I see some lightsabers behind you. And I think there it is.
Yeah.
There it is. I was gonna say
Superheroes up there. It's really like a combination of all of my passions. You've got your superheroes, Iron Man, you've got all my princesses, you've got my lightsabers, and the rest of the room is also covered in toys and all that kind of amazing stuff as well.
Love it. Love it.
I'm going to get more about in your background, but knowing that you loved at formerly MGM Studios, now Disney's Hollywood Studios, the animation courtyard there, the fact that they're kind of returning to that had to make you happy hearing that news the other day.
It made me really, really excited. My best friend, Elliot, who was also on the cruise with us, he was the one whose birthday we were celebrating on the Marvel Day Sea Cruise. That was his first job. He worked at that animation building. And he was also my supervising director on Elena of Avalor, and that's where we met. And when we first started having these conversations, and me telling him this story, he was like, I think I was probably in that room that day when you were like face pressed up against the glass. So when they made that announcement that they're bringing that animation courtyard back and really making it a tribute to what it was before, that was such a nice moment. But I'm more excited because that moment in that space meant so much to me and inspired me. And now I know future kids and adults are going to have that same ability going into that space.
Right. Absolutely. Completely agree with you. 100%.
Right.
So now we've been stalking you, as we know, we've been trying to get you on this show for a while. So we've been sort of lightly stalking you. One thing we found out in our research is you did a master's degree thesis based on Disney princesses, right? And kind of looking up at how maybe some of the way the viewpoints are on them isn't exactly the way maybe they are perceived, right, Michelle?
Right. Like from a superficial, I'm just looking for a prince kind of person.
Yeah. So could you share a little bit about that, about your research and what inspired you to do your thesis on Disney princesses and maybe how that helped evolve your storytelling at Disney?
I was really excited to write my master's thesis on the evolution of the Disney princess. It kind of came together in this really organic way. I was studying, doing visual studies, studying literature, studying gender, all kind of combined during my master's studies. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and it really came because of Belle. I got so tired of seeing Belle presented on packaging. It's just like a girl in a beautiful ball gown, like holding a rose. Because to me, that didn't define who she was as a character. I absolutely loved Belle. I aspired to be Belle when I grew up. Like that was like so to see her kind of the complexity of her get stripped away to this one idea. I I really wanted to kind of dig in and be like, what does the art of the actual film say? What does the text of the film say? How does the visuals of that film support these characters? And then I started looking back and thinking, Snow White also got kind of like the edges rounded off of her. Cinderella, all these classic characters that we love. And I really wanted to kind of go in and look at the text and look at the time in which they were created. And, I'm not here to say like Snow White is like a model of like modern womanhood. But if we look at her from the era in which she was created in the 1930s, she has traits that were more progressive for a female of that time than was generally accepted. And I kind of so I wanted that was the fun of it was going in and finding those little bits and pieces in the movies that help support ideas and a way to honor both the animators and the storytellers who did that, but also kind of to set the like narrative a little bit differently because I think there is a narrative out there. Like all these characters are really bad role models for little girls. And again, they can be because they're not as empowered as we'd like them to be now. But it's like looking at a piece of art for 500 years ago and say it doesn't reflect my sensibilities today. It's like, well, you kind of have to look at it from the era in which it was created and view it from that lens. So it was really fun for me to be doing that. The funniest story I have from that whole time, I was working on that for about 2 years and I was nearing the end. I was almost done writing it and Frozen came out. And I was just excited to go, as an animation fan, as a Disney fan, I was just excited to go see the movie. And I went opening night. I was there. I was sitting down, had my popcorn. I was ready to go. And then the love story started. And then Anna was like, first guy I'm meeting, I'm in love with. And I started having this panic attack because my whole master's thesis was there is this evolution that the female characters are becoming more complex and richer and more modern in the storytelling. And I was like, oh no, this is not an evolution. It is a huge step back. I spent the entire movie with my stomach in knots. I could not enjoy the movie because I didn't know where it was going to go. Spoiler alert, it does not end up being about the guy, for those who have not seen Frozen. If you're listening to this podcast, if you haven't seen Frozen, you need to go see Frozen. Turn this off and go see Frozen before you listen. But I was in the middle of that moment and I was like, oh, thank goodness they told the story in the way that I could actually connect to my thesis. So my conclusion my conclusion chapter of my thesis ended up being like, let's look at Frozen as could be the future of Disney storytelling, especially when it comes to gender and women's roles, because the whole story had become about the sisters. The love story was about these two sisters, not about the guys. And yes, you've got Kristoff, you've got Hans, but that all kinds of becomes secondary to this core story of the love between these two female characters. And what's also been great is just watching how that's continued to progress with stories like Zootopia and Judy Hopps and Moana and Mirabelle and Encanto. It has been less and less about love story and more about like empowerment. And that to me has been really exciting to see.
Yeah, I really think we could. I mean, we have a lot to talk about here, more important things that are going on for you right now, but we could base a whole episode and just sit and talk with you about the evolution of Disney princesses. And by the way, James, we live by one motto on this show. Because as we all know, hashtag real men love Frozen. That is one of our mottos on this show. So
yes.
we're going along with that for sure. Michelle.
Agreed.
So your career path is, as I mentioned earlier, I found it very inspiring. And I believe you shared with me that your first job at Disney was a survey taker, right? At Disneyland. And, now shaping stories for Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel. I know you have a strong passion. It comes through very, very well. And obviously you have a great work ethics. And And those would be definitely reasons for this impressive trajectory. But is there anything else that you would cite that really helped you along this way?
Um, so it's so funny. I love that you know all this going back because I do remember us talking about my first job at Disney. The funny story that I always tell about that is growing up again in the 80s and the 90s before like the internet was what it was. I just assumed that all Disney movies were made at MGM Disney MGM Studios because that's the only place I'd ever seen it. So I graduated high school and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to pursue. So about a year after high school, I packed up everything and moved out to Florida. I was like, this is it. I'm gonna start working there. And I got there just about the time that studio was closing, and everyone was like, you're on the wrong coast. And I was like, oh no, big mistake. But I was there and I got that job taking surveys in the front of the parks at Disney, which was so much fun. And I made so many good friends and really, really learned a lot about working hard during that because it was my first really big job. I was away from home. I had to kind of like survive on my own. So it just made me a really hard worker. I started going to school around that time as well, or going to college. So combining like having to work full time and go to school full time and keep up that standard of hard work every day was something that was really important to me. I would say, for my career and as it's gone, yes, you need hard work. You need to be passionate. Those things are definitely there. For me, I think a key was I always asked permission for a little bit more. And that might sound like greedy or egotistical or something like that, but it was really my desire to learn. And on Elena, very early on, I would be out in my cubicle, like doing some work, and I might have some downtime, and everybody'd be in a meeting behind closed doors. And I was kind of like, I kind of want to know what's going on in that meeting just to learn, not because I'm a busybody, but I want to hear what they're talking about, how the decisions are being made. I really, without knowing it, I wanted to know how they were making the show. And so I started asking, hey, can I sit in on that meeting? And they'd be like, well, if you want to take notes, sure, go ahead. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take notes. So I started taking notes in those meetings. And the more I did that, the more I got asked to be in other meetings, taking more notes. And by the end of the first season, I was pretty much in every meeting that was involved in pre-production of the show, which really gave me time to learn from the showrunner and the supervising director and the art director. I really started picking things up. And I will always say that my time on Elena was show running boot camp 101 because that show was so beautiful and so complex. And having to learn just how that show was made from the ground up every day really kind of set in my mind, like I could see how I could do that someday.
So I'm glad it was a good time for you to bring up Elena of Avalor because we wanted to speak to you about that. Being, you're a Mexican American, and this is basically the first Latina Disney princess. What did it feel? How did you feel getting to be associated with that show, and how did it affect you personally?
It was quite interesting. I'd gone in for the interview and they had just announced the show, but I didn't know that's what I was interviewing for. I got called in this, hey, there's this show. They're looking for a production secretary. Would you mind going in and meeting with them? And I was like, yeah, of course, anything that's going to get my foot in the door. So I walk in and I'm in the office with Craig Gerber, who created Sophia the First and Elena of Avalor and Firebuds. And he's very talented and a great guy. And I'm in this office with him. This is the first time I'm meeting him. And his office is covered in Sophia the First stuff. And I was like, well, I know this isn't for Sophia, but they did just announce that the creator of Sophia was going to be making this Elena of Avalor show. And I kind of pieced it all together. I was like, wait, are you all making the new Elena of Avalor show? And they were like, yeah, did nobody tell you that? And I was like, not at all. But I reached into my briefcase and pulled out my master's thesis on the evolution of Disney Princess. I'm like, yeah, but I just wrote this in graduate school, so maybe that'd be interesting to you. And they looked and they're like, you literally wrote the book on Disney princesses. And I was like, kind of. And then they were like, oh, so you're Mexican American? They were like, this couldn't like work out better if we'd asked for it. So I didn't end up getting that production secretary job. But a week later, they called and asked if I'd be the production assistant job, which I was even more excited about because that meant being closer to the art and the animation side of things. I was even more excited about that. But from a personal standpoint, being a part of that show as my first foot in the door in animation was one of the greatest gifts I could have ever gotten. Just personally, professionally, the people I got to work with there were also caring and kind and had this amazing open door policy to talk and discuss. And just coming from where I came from and my background, to be able to be like, I get to be a part of the show that represents my culture, represents my people in this very positive, beautiful way. And that to me was, I think we all have those moments in life where like this moment changed things. And Elena was that moment for me that changed things, not just because it was my first job in animation, but because it was a place where I was able to learn and grow and become the storyteller that I wanted to become. And just so everybody knows, for the listeners at home, you won't be able to see it, but the people on YouTube, I have Elena's scepter tattooed on my arm, which it's my only tattoo I have. An Iron Man one might be coming, but this one was because Elena was so important to me, and just getting to be a whole part of that process, as I wanted to honor her and the team and that show with my tattoo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I remember you showing us that tattoo when we were on the ship, and we were very impressed. And that's amazing, and totally makes sense with your tie-in with that.
Yeah.
What one with that princess, but that job as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So now moving on. Okay, I don't want to leave that behind because that was amazing. But we want to get to your main project, your new project here. But before we get to that, we're big Star Wars fans. We know you're a big Star Wars fan. What was it like, and how did you get involved with the Young Jedi Adventures? How did that come about, and was that a pinch me moment for you?
Yes, there was so many pinch me. I mean, I've had a lot of pinch me moments in my career. I'd say one of the biggest pinch me moments I ever had was, I'm skipping forward a little bit. I was already gotten a job on Young Jedi Adventures. It was during the pandemic, and so we weren't meeting in person a lot. But vaccinations had happened. We were starting to kind of poke our heads up a little bit more here and there. So they asked, "Hey, will you come and do a story break with us on the lot?" And it was my very first story break for the show. It was going to be on the Disney lot in Burbank, in the Lucasfilm like studio space, which was again exciting. But I remember driving onto the lot for that time, and I'd been on the lot before, but driving onto the lot and coming in through the gate, and they ask you your name, and I'm like, "Oh, my name's James. I'm here for a meeting at Lucasfilm." And those words coming out of my mouth, still like I can't believe that I got to say those words. Like, who gets to say like, "Oh, I'm here for a meeting with Lucasfilm"? And that was so exciting and cool. Again, I'll talk about my best friend and mentor, Elliot Bohr, who was the supervising director on Elena of Avalor. He became the supervising director on Young Jedi Adventures and one of the producers on that show. And as they were ramping up for season 2, they were looking for some new writers. And I had been telling him, he knew from the beginning, like, I would love to write those stories and work on that show. So luckily he made those introductions for me. I started to have some meetings. They were able to read some of my writing, which I'd written this sample script about a female pirate. And that season of Young Jedi, they really wanted to focus on the pirates as the threat. Like, the theme of the season was called The Rise of the Pirates. So it couldn't have been better timing to be like, "Oh, here's my sample script about a female pirate with all the swashbuckling and like swordplay action and stuff like that." And when they read that, we're like, "Yeah, this is the kind of action we need on the show for this season." So I was beyond thrilled when they offered me the job, just because being a lifelong fan of Star Wars and getting to play in this world with these characters. And Young Jedi Adventure is lore. It is canon. Everything that happened in there is part of the overall saga of Star Wars. So getting to write famous characters like Yoda, like, there's not a lot of people in the world who've gotten to write dialogue for Yoda, and I'm one of those people now. So that's one of those moments that like your brain breaks a little bit. I always talk about my first time getting to write a lightsaber battle. And I like to listen to music when I'm writing, specifically film scores. And I like to pick like certain, like, If I'm writing action, something that has similar action to it. So of course I'm listening to Duel of the Fates as I'm writing this like lightsaber battle. It's just like on a loop. And I walked away from my computer after writing that, and my face hurt. And I couldn't figure out why my face hurt. And it was because I'd been smiling so hard the entire time I was writing that my cheeks were just sore from the experience. And that's kind of how I felt the whole way across my time on Young Jedi Adventure, was just that excited joy for the project, for that space, for that world, but also to be able to write Star Wars stories for a preschool audience and introduce them to the world earlier than they've ever been able to be introduced. I'm again so proud of that team and of that show. It's beautiful, and the stories are just so smart and fun. And it was another dream come true getting to write for those characters, and also why I have 5 lightsabers on my wall behind me. I will also say the other best thing about working on that show was when the Galactic Star Cruiser was available. I was like, well, now I kind of have to go do it because I work on a Star Wars show. So like, this is research for me now. And I'm so grateful I did it, because I went and I got to do it right before they announced it was closing. So I got in under the wire, got to experience it, heartbroken that it's gone because it was one of the most amazing things Disney's ever produced. But I'm grateful that I got to do it and got to come back from that experience and talk to some of my Lucasfilm executives who got to work on that and have like really fun conversations about what they were doing behind the scenes on that project. It was so cool.
Oh my God, that is so awesome. I just, like you said, break your brain, I'm sure, because I'm just like in awe hearing about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that you are one of the few people that's ever been able to write dialogue for Yoda. I'm just happy that we know a person that ever writes dialogue for Yoda. That
I'm
makes me pretty
friends
happy.
with Yoda. It's fine. It's okay. You're 1 degree away from Yoda now.
Nice, nice. Gonna put that in the resume. So that is a show which I love. I love that show is, because it trying to bring young people into different forms of canon, different realms, different forms of fantasy and science fiction and action adventure, whatever, new ways to do it. For Lucasfilm, they've done it for a while with Rebels and the Clone Wars before that. And now Young Jedi Adventures can get even some of the more younglings into it. Now you've got this brand new show bringing on even more younglings into the Marvel universe.
Yeah, and we're excited to talk about it because we love it. But before we get into it, you talked about a pinch me moment, or, I think you also had a pixie dust experience with receiving news about Iron Man and his awesome friends.
Yes, that is true. I had been working with Marvel and Disney Junior to develop kind of the idea for what an Iron Man preschool series could be for about, I'd say, nine months. At one point, they'd been gracious enough to reach out to me and said, "Hey, what would you think about developing an Iron Man series for kids?" And I almost threw out my back. I jumped up so excited, like screaming yes, and had so much fun playing in that world and thinking about how do you make Tony Stark appealing for a younger audience? How do you round off some of those sharper edges of both the comic book character and the MCU version, and how to make him presentable for kids? And I just had great executives working alongside me, great partners working with me. But Disney does these things. A lot of the studios do these things called a bake-off, where they will go out to multiple creatives and say, "What would you do?" And everybody kind of everybody submits their ideas, and then whoever wins the bake-off, obviously wins the bake-off. We'd had to postpone a big trip to Europe for my big birthday. I was turning 40, and we were all going out there to do a Disney cruise to Norway. And the pandemic ruined that. So that didn't get to happen. So it got postponed a year. Then it got postponed another year. We finally got to go out in 2022. But because we had postponed so much, every time we postponed, I was like, well, let's just add a couple more days to the trip. And if I'm adding a couple more days to the trip in Europe, we're going to Disneyland Paris. So we went to Disneyland Paris because I was working on this Iron Man thing. I was like, well, I had to stay at the Art of Marvel Hotel. That had recently just opened. Again, my love of comics and art and working on this thing, all of that together just felt like this is the perfect place to be. So we checked in that one morning, It was probably like September 2022. We checked in and we were walking around. I just bought this really cute new Avengers hoodie that I was all excited to wear. And I was going around taking pictures in front of all the art. And when you walk in, they have like Iron Man suits when you first walk in the lobby. It's such a cool space. And I get a call from my executive at Disney Junior, Brian O'Connell, another great champion of mine who I absolutely adore. He reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, James, do you have just a moment to chat?" And I was like, "Yes, Brian, for you, anything." He's like, "Well, I just want to let you know that we've decided that yours is the version of Iron Man that we're going to go forward with." And I'm standing in the Art of Marvel Hotel. There's this giant Iron Man statue sitting next to me. And it just felt like so kismet and fate for all those things to be coming together at that moment. Then we walk outside of the hotel and there's this giant, even bigger statue of Iron Man out there. So I had to get like an iconic shot with like me doing repulsor blasts. And then the rest of the day was just fun because they had just opened up their Avengers campus. So we were exploring their Avengers campus all day. They have like a Tony Stark inspired restaurant there. So we had to eat there and ride the roller coaster. It was so much fun because it all came together in such a great way. And then, but it also meant, okay, once I'm home from this vacation, I really got to get to work.
And boy, did you get to work.
Yeah.
And what a show this is. We were watching it all weekend and just really, really getting the kick out of so many things, so many great things, obviously for kids and getting them involved in great lessons and great fun and adventure and excitement. But I picked out a lot of things that were like, as an adult Marvel fan, I'm like, oh, I think that was intentional. Oh, I think that was intentional. We'll get to that in a little bit. But can you just talk a little bit about the overview of the project in general? What you think, what really makes it so special?
Well, we like to say eternally on the show, our supervising director, Mike Dowdy, kind of coined this phrase, Spidey swung so Iron Man could fly. And that's really why we were able to make this, was the success and the partnership between Disney Junior and Marvel creating Spidey. And they wanted to continue that success. And that's when they reached out to us and said, "Hey, what would you do with an Iron Man show?" And really, really for me from day one, it was a project about friendship. It's right there in the title, right? It's his awesome friends. Friendship had to be front and center in every story. But more than anything, I wanted it to be just joyful and entertaining for kids to be at home and be excited. And when they armor up, when the characters armor up on the show, I wanted kids to feel like they could armor up. And it was funny because we were on that Marvel cruise together. And there was one night they were doing some show up on the top deck. It wasn't the big Marvel show. It was, I can't remember which one. It was another one with characters. But there were a lot of little kids running around dressed as Spider-Man and Captain America and Miles Morales and Iron Man. And they were already kind of doing the motions. And I definitely got inspired by that and excited. Like, those little kids that were down there playing Iron Man, I wanted to make a show that they would still be excited about and want to be Iron Man as well. So that was always the goal for me from day one, was how can we make a show that really is going to get kids excited, but also to your point, Tom, what's going to make their family want to sit down and watch it too? Like, the main audience is definitely preschool, but we wanted to make this a family experience where everybody could sit down, have a good time, and enjoy these Marvel stories as a family together.
Definitely. And it definitely hits that. I mean, you're talking about the joy, and that comes through really strong. I think the other thing that is so powerful in it is they are friends. They are working together to accomplish their goals, to do good things for their community. But they also each have opportunities to shine individually, like what their gifts are or what makes them special. And I think that's really powerful in storytelling.
Yeah, I will say each one of them is kind of a part of me, especially now at this point. I've been living with these characters for so long. All of them kind of feel like my kids that we're all raising together. Like, me and the whole crew were raising these kids together. But from being with them so much and so close, so from the beginning, I think subconsciously I infused a little bit of myself into each of them. And it's funny now, like when I see moments on the show and I'm like, that sounds like somebody I know. I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. I'm like, and that wasn't like intentional, but it, I think I am a very excitable person. I have a lot of passion, and that comes across in each of the characters in different ways and different shapes. And I'm glad people are picking up on that. Not about me, but about that fun and enthusiasm that the characters themselves have on the show.
I'm curious on how you decided. Obviously, it was an Iron Man series. Of course, you're going to have a young Tony Stark as Iron Man there, but deciding to fill out the rest of the cast around him, what made you decide that Riri Williams, obviously Ironheart, and interesting that you went with Amadeus Cho as Iron Hulk. What made you decide to bring in those characters into it as well?
So we were always working very closely with Marvel and Disney Junior, and there's always projects, other things going on. So there's characters you can have access to. There might be things happening other places with other characters. So it wasn't like, hey, the Marvel comic book characters are all open to your whatever you want. There's a big business happening behind the scenes, right? But when it came down to it, I sat down with the team and we were looking at it, and we were like, if Tony is our main character, he is this super genius. A lot of episodes are going to revolve around building and inventions and creativity, and they all are going to live in this amazing place called the IQ, which was the Iron Quarters, which was going to be very techy and things like that. It kind of started forming for us that he needed to be surrounded by, specifically his closest friends needed to be super geniuses with him. And Ironheart is already right there. She's in the Iron family. She's a super genius herself in the Marvel comic books and the MCU. But then we were really kind of circling around, well, who could we have that third spot? And while Rhodey would have been amazing, there's certain connotations with his name that aren't quite preschool appropriate, but also he didn't really fit that criteria of like the super genius that could build. Like War Machine gets his armor because of what Tony builds for him. He didn't build it himself. And that's really what we were looking for, was that third character who could do that. And Amadeus Cho came up, and it was just, once we saw that, it was like, that's it. That's him. He's smart. He's funny. He's intelligent. He's a builder. But on top of that, he's a Hulk character. So that's just fun too. And it really, once we had those three together, we got that circle of smart super geniuses, but also smart super geniuses with diverse points of view and diverse backgrounds. And that was something we were really excited about.
Definitely, definitely. Excuse me. You also have some great villains that come on and really bring life to the show. We love all of them. Ultron, who's voiced by Tony Hale.
Great Tony Hale.
Yeah.
Amazing.
the fantastic Tony Hale.
And I love in interviews that he really appreciates this project. You could tell he has the heart associated with it. We notice he has some characters with Ultron, nuts and bolts, and kind of wondering, is this kind of like a little pain and panic vibe from Hercules?
Thank you so much for noticing that. That was like one of the day one ideas we had on the show. Was I always just love a villain with some like henchmen, sidekicks, because there's always fun energy to play off with that. You've got Pain and Panic, you've got Iago, you've got the hyenas with Scar. Like there's just that fun playfulness. And we had such a good time working with Tony Hale and writing Ultron. He's such a big over the top character, and just always thinks he's the smartest, always thinks he's the best. He's better than any human. Like he can't stand the Iron Friends because they're always foiling his plans, obviously, but he thinks he's smarter than they are. He is not. He just has a bigger ego. And we really wanted to kind of give him some characters just to cause him even more headache, because it's just fun. Like one of my favorite things to do, and you'll see this in the whole show, is I love villains getting their comeuppance. It's just really, really fun for me to write that and to read that and to watch that. And these episodes, working on them as both a co-EP and story editor, I'm seeing these episodes 100 times in different ways before they ever reach the screen. And so like I have to entertain myself a little bit too, and I want to entertain the rest of the team. So creating nuts and bolts, who are Ultron's henchbots. One is the very sycophant, that's Bolts. Bolts just is obsessed with Ultron and thinks Ultron is the greatest thing ever, which Ultron, of course, loves because he likes that admiration. But then there's Nuts, who is kind of just nuts and just the kindest. He's not a villain in any real way. He's just kind of happy to be included. And one of my favorite details that we talked about and we put into the show was I kind of love this idea that you'd always hear a screw loose when he walks because he's nuts. So there is a subtle sound effect in there when he's moving that you can kind of just hear some screws rattling around inside of him because he's not all there.
Oh, wow.
I love that. I'm now going to listen for that. I wasn't expecting that. By the way, they're also played by some pretty impressive people. Gary Anthony Williams plays Nuts. You may know him. He's an improv comedic genius. You may have seen on Whose Line Is It Anyways? And Mo Collins, another improv comedian who's been on Mad TV, was on Parks and Rec, in recurring roles. Great as well. You got a great cast. As far as the other villain, I as much as I love Ultron, I gotta say I really love Swarm. I love Vanessa Bayer as Swarm, and a little different than the Swarm you might see in the comics, but
yes,
really, really fun and entertaining, and a great villain.
We had so much fun with our entire voice cast is just stellar. Our voice director, casting director, Allison Bosch, is the best in the game. Absolutely love her. When we were kind of starting to talk about who we thought would be right for the show, she was the one that came to us. It was like Tony Hale for Ultron, which I immediately loved because Tony he rarely gets to be the bad guy. He's always kind of, the Buster character or the Gary character. And Forky, who I love, but Forky is also just like the sweet innocent. He always plays the sweet innocent. So when she pitched, like, let's offer Tony this role as Ultron, I was like, this is perfect because his voice is phenomenal. He's hilarious. But doing that twist on him and having him get to kind of chew the scenery a little bit and be the bad guy, recording him is always hilarious. Vanessa was the same way. We were talking about who we thought could play this villain Swarm. And Vanessa was another character. Like, she always gets cast in kind of that sweet girl next door. And she's always funny. Everything she does is hilarious. I've loved her through all of her Saturday Night Live stuff and even things she's done after that. But she never gets to kind of like be the chew the scenery villain character. So getting her on there was just so much fun to work with her. And she really brings a completely different vibe from what Tony's doing. Her Swarm is this Wicked Witch meets Maleficent meets kind of a petulant Valley Girl vibe. And it's really funny because she just also can't be like bothered by being annoyed by the Iron Friends. And then Talon Warburton, who's our Absorbing Man, who was honestly one of our hardest characters to kind of figure out in the writer's room. We knew his power set so well, like, okay, he can absorb this stuff, but who is he in this space? Because Ultron's got all these cool inventions that he can use to defeat the Iron Friends, and Swarm has these really cool robotic bugs that she uses in different ways. And yeah, okay, Absorbing Man can absorb like bricks and like get brick-like skin, but how does that compare when like fighting Iron Friends that have these repulsors? So he was a very, very harder character for us to figure out, like, who was he really? And then Talon came in and gave that voice performance, and it changed everything. We all immediately saw, oh, this is who this character is. And it was funny because then even the writers in the writers' room got more excited. Like, well, now I want to do an Absorbing Man story because I want Talon to like perform this character. And then working with both Mo and Gary playing Nuts and Bolts, we would almost always record them together. And that was just like, when you talk about like the funniest times of like working on the show, having them in there and just they're feeding off of each other. They're both amazing improv performers, and they were just coming up with stuff in the moment. And we would all be in the recording booth just rolling over laughing just at how ridiculous they were being and how far they were pushing it. And it really comes across when you see the characters on screen because they're just so much fun to watch.
Oh my God, for sure.
Really, 100%. So fun.
And love the little quippy lines that they get to say. I mean, Swarm talking about in your little dog too. I mean, just things like that that go in there, just crack up kind of
And that's
moments.
and that's the kind of stuff that we know kids, the youngest audience members won't get that at first, but one day they will grow up and they will understand that line and be like, oh, that's a reference back to those things. And Simpsons to me was one of my favorite is still one of my favorite shows of all time. I still watch it consistently. But when I was a kid, there was plenty there I didn't understand. I got some of the jokes and that was enough. Like I was still laughing and loved it. But as I've grown up and gone back to that show and understood, oh, this is what they're referencing here, or this is what this joke is, or this is a pop culture reference. It makes it fun repeat viewing. And we're really hopeful that kids who grow up with our version of Iron Man and his awesome friends, and then moves on to the MCU version and stuff like that, will come back to this eventually and be like, oh, I remember when I first met this character and how I met this character, and like rediscover things that are layered into the show like that.
Yeah, I love the other one I love is I think I caught this at one point when it was Ultron and his plot was foiled by the Iron Friends, and he like, oh, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling Iron Friends. I'm like total Scooby Doo moment. I love it. Good.
I think I think that was in my first episode that I wrote, and I was like, I can't not do this. Like I have to put this in there because it just feels so right in that moment. And again, it's that thing I love when characters, bad guys specifically, get their comeuppance. And I love just sticking it in and rubbing the salt in just a little bit for the bad guys for their bad behavior.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally.
You also get some other characters involved in this too. You get, I mean, yes, you get the Iron Friends that we just discussed, but also Sam Wilson, Captain America, makes an appearance in it. T'Challa, Black Panther. I know you're a big Black Panther fan, so I'm thinking you had a heavy leaning into getting T'Challa involved in this, and also Anya Corazon as Iron Spider as well. So a lot of other great heroes that make appearances.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And again, it was so exciting because Disney and Marvel were really on board with let's push the diversity here. Let's make sure this feels like characters for everybody to relate to. And while we do have our three super genius Iron Friends, it was fun getting to be like, what is Sam Wilson's Cap's relationship with Tony Stark? What is T'Challa's relationship, like an 8-year-old T'Challa, or even Anya Corazon, who's a lesser known character, but we got to really kind of help define her and make her a character that kids could relate to. And that was what was really, really fun about getting to play with all of these characters, was creating them in a way that was accessible for our audience, but also true to the characters in the comic books, and honoring who they are in the MCU films. And I think across the board, the T'Challa Black Panther was the character we were all felt, I wouldn't say the most precious about, but we all felt the most responsibility towards. It wasn't it wasn't long after Chadwick Boseman had passed that we were getting to start working on this character, and presenting him as this very different version, an 8-year-old version of this character, and honoring just the beautiful films that they made with Black Panther, and the actor and the character. Just bringing all that together, I think we all felt a huge responsibility, but we didn't take it lightly. And it was there are moments when we have with him that I just feel very like, I think we did it. I think we honored who this character is. And I mean, we have an episode in the first batch that's already dropped where we get to go to Wakanda. And that was beyond exciting for me when they were like, Marvel's like, hey, would you all want to do an episode where we went to Wakanda? And again, almost threw out my back from screaming yes so quickly. And it was so much fun getting to go there and explore that world from like an 8-year-old perspective. And our amazing music composer, Matt Margison, he has done some amazing things. It's been so much fun working with him to come up with the themes, like the musical themes for each of the characters. And what he was able to create for Black Panther's theme and Wakanda's theme, it feels like it could fit right next to the movies. It just, the African drums and the vibes, you feel Black Panther come into the screen, and there's no other character that is, that's Black Panther when you hear that music come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me just get into this. The soundtrack is amazing for your show, and I know you know this. I'm not, but
Would you say it's totally awesome?
it is totally awesome. It is totally awesome, and we have. I have a a special affinity to it because I grew up in San Diego. I grew up in Poway. I grew up a Blink 182 fan. Well, I was a little older by when Blink 182, but it strikes my pop punk heart that Mark Hoppus wrote "Totally Awesome," your theme, and then it continued. I know. I think I heard you say he didn't do the other music, but the fact that it all feels like it flows together so well. It's an amazing soundtrack. Tell us a little bit how that all came about.
So that is all credit to the Disney music team. Jay Stutler and his group of people over there, they have the best relationships with everybody. They're the easiest people to work with. And we knew we wanted to do another unique sound because Spidey had Patrick Stump and it's so iconic for Spidey. But when I was developing the show, one of the things that I pitched to differentiate it from that was I want to set it on the West Coast. I feel like there's not a lot of preschool content that takes place in a bigger LA, San Diego, West Coasty type of vibe. It's always more like neighborhoods, like Brooklyn-y kind of spaces. And I love living in LA. I love living in California. And I kind of wanted to show that in a really fun preschool way. So once we knew that's where it was going to be set, we knew the musical sound had to accompany that. And Jay and his team were like, what if we could get you, Mark Hoppus, to do this theme song? And again, throwing your back out, screaming yes so much. And it was just, he was so kind and so on board from just like the moment we said go. He was like, yeah, let's do this. And we got to have meetings with him where we got to present, here's the characters, here what the kind of stories are. And we kind of just gave him a little blueprint of what the world was and what we were hoping for the show to feel like. He and his team walked away and a couple of weeks later dropped this demo on us that I'm pretty close is like 95% of the actual song you now hear. We might have had like a couple of notes on some lines, but it was really this version of the song. And that all came out of one conversation of just talking about this was the vibe, this is the world. And he nailed it out the gate. And it became the North Star for all the music for the show. And I think even the energy for the show, because the theme song sets the pace for what the rest of the episode is going to feel like. And it was our job as the writers to make sure that energy of that amazing main title carried out throughout the show.
Totally.
It really does. It's fantastic. And then, yes, the armor up is amazing. I even kind of like the Ultron song. I'm sorry, but I kind of do.
That was one of the most difficult things. It was one of our craziest ideas early out the gate. Was an episode where Ultron takes over the radio with a really obnoxious song that he has made, and nobody else can hear anything else. We wanted it to be both catchy, but it had to be annoying enough to like make the characters be like, I can't hear this all day. But it also had to be catchy enough that you kind of liked it a little bit. And, we always talked about like, we want it to be like our version of the Baby Shark that like, if you hear it, it's catchy, but still a little bit better because it's like fun and it's funny. And like, is it going to drive you absolutely crazy? And Andy Bean, who wrote that song for us, we gave him a Herculean task on that episode because it does end with a battle of the bands, right? It's Ultron's song versus the Iron Friends and their song, which was a really easy concept to write down on a script. And then once it got to producing, it was like, oh, wait, we need these two songs to be playing at the same time. They can't be overpowering each other. They have to like come together harmonically. And I felt so bad when we had to pitch that to Andy and be like, can you do this? And he was like, yeah, I got this. And he came back and it works perfectly. The Ultron song is a bop. And then the Iron Friends song is also so great and rousing. And they marry together so nicely. And it's funny because the Ultron song is playing so loud when that battle starts. And it slowly throughout the song, as the battle is happening, you start losing that. The Ultron song starts fading and the Iron Friends song starts like rising. And to me, it's one of my favorite moments of the entire series so far is that scene. Cause it's so out there a little bit, but it also feels very comic booky at the same time.
I also like that Iron Hulk has like a a big bass drum. Like, of course, Hulk smash is going to have to smash a big bass drum, right?
It was not even a question. It was just like, he has to have a giant drum. And we knew we wanted Iron Pup in the episode too. And I was like, tambourine. She needs to have a tambourine.
Yes.
So to just have this little dog just like rocking out on a tambourine is one of the cutest things in our show too.
Yes.
So great.
So many cute
So
things.
great. We're running out of time, but just quickly, do you have any great behind the scenes moments that are kind of your favorite things that maybe you could share with us?
I mean, I've said a lot already. One day, we do have an episode coming up that may feature all of our villains in it together. So we recorded them all at the same time. We brought Tony, Vanessa, and Talon in all at once, which is very rare. We usually record people just one at a time. Nuts and Bolts were the exception because they just play off each other so well. And Mo and Gary are friends. So it was just good to capture that energy. But bringing them all in together and having them record, because a lot of this episode is they're villains. They all want to be top dog, and getting to play that against each other, stuff like that. And just having them all be in the room was kind of a dream. That was a dream experience for me. Getting to work with Tony, who I've been a fan of for years, getting to work with Vanessa, who I've been a fan of for years. I would honestly say, though, the thing that makes me the most excited every day, the thing that when the hours are long or I'm writing late into the night, the thing that makes me most excited beyond these amazing characters or beyond creating the show for the kids at home is the amazing people I've gotten to work with. From my partners at Marvel, my partners at Disney Junior, to my showrunner, Sean Coyle, who has just been my big brother this whole project, and the writing team that we have, our directors, our designers, our animators, the whole process, everybody that I get to work with at Atomic Studios. I know it's not like I'm giving flowers to everybody, but I really want to give those flowers to everybody because nobody can make these shows by themselves. And yeah, it might have been my initial idea that got the green light or whatever, but everybody took that concept and took that idea and plussed it to ways I could have never imagined, I could have never hoped for. And the thing that is now on the screen, I just feel so much pride for. And it's also, I look back to that little kid that I was that loved animation, and he would have been a fan of this show. This show would have inspired his imagination so much. And I know I'm on the show. I know I've worked on the show. I would be a fan of this show whether I was working on it or not, because it's just that much fun and exciting.
Wow, it's a fantastic show. Again, check it out. Iron Man and His Awesome Friends. You can find it on Disney Junior. It's also on Disney Plus. Check it out. Again, it's for the kids, but I think you'll enjoy it as well, even as adults. There's some things that will hit you as well, right, Michelle?
Absolutely, loving it. Yes.
James, before we let you go, are there any places that maybe people could follow you or check in with you and see what projects you're working on?
Yeah, the best place to follow me would be Instagram. It's my full name, James Eason-Garcia. That's the easiest way to find me, follow me. Beyond working in animation, I am also a big Disney adult, just like both of you. So there's lots of fun content of me running Disney races, going on Disney cruises. I'm going to be visiting Tokyo Disney for the first time next spring. So there's going to be a lot of good content there. But yeah, that's kind of the best place to follow along and see my adventures as a co-EP and story editor.
Yeah, you definitely want to check it out. So much great stuff out there. And this show is fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks again, James.
Yes.
Really appreciate you being so generous with your time. Once again, James Eason-Garcia, co-executive producer and story editor for Disney Junior's Marvel's Iron Man and His Awesome Friends. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you, Tom and Michelle. So glad we finally got to do this. Let's meet on a cruise again soon.
Absolutely, 100%.
Every time I hear more about the Destiny, I'm thinking, that's your ship, James.
It is my ship. It is my ship.
It's like, oh, he must be putting a wish list out, and they're just like, okay, we'll add that to it.
All right. We'll do it again on the Destiny.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Perfect. I like that.